What is going on, guys? It is Wrestlemania here, back with another video. Wrestlemania is always ready to bring you something different and entertaining. Join us for the first edition of wrestling's GOAT, i.e. the greatest of all time, as we examine the 10 defining moments in a wrestler's career. In this episode, we'll be looking at the amazing exploits of the Nature Boy, Ric Flair. Number 10. Ric Flair makes Terry Funk say, "I quit." When Ric Flair rebuffed former world champion Terry Funk's request for a title shot, the middle-aged and crazy Funk pile-drived Ric Flair through a table, seemingly ending Flair's career. Naturally, this was just the beginning of a violent feud between the two, which culminated in an I Quit match at Clash of Champions 9 New York Knockout. Both men battered each other mercilessly, but Flair was determined to end Funk's career after Funk nearly ended Flair's life in a previous encounter where the Funker put a plastic bag over Flair's head, an angle that proved so controversial it only aired once on TV. As promised, Funk shook Flair's hand after the match, signaling his respect and an end to the feud. Number 9. A dynasty begins. Ric Flair was on the fast track to the NWA World Championship, with Flair being considered early on in his NWA career during the late 70s. The NWA finally pulled the trigger on Flair's first reign, putting him over the American Dream Dusty Rhodes on the 17th of September 1981. This would foreshadow the Flair and Rhodes rivalry in Jim Crockett Promotions during the mid and late 80s, where the two battled numerous times over the world title. Number 8. A dream match in the Garden. Although Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan clashed repeatedly in WCW, the matches were lopsided affairs, with Hogan dominating Flair to the point where the Hulkster retired him in 1994. When Ric Flair entered the WWF as the real world champion, WWF fans couldn't wait to see the man who epitomized the National Wrestling Alliance fighting the man who epitomized the WWF. After a short program with longtime foe Rowdy Piper, Flair met Hogan in Madison Square Garden on the 30th November 1992, defeating Hogan by pinfall with the help of a pair of brass knuckles. Unfortunately for Flair, his win was short-lived after Dave Hebner caught Flair with the foreign object, resulting in a reversal of the decision. Conventional wisdom has it that the two would have met at WrestleMania 8. But the house show audiences were much less than anticipated, leading the WWF scrapping a Flair vs Hogan program. Nonetheless, this was a dream match where Flair got to do more than just count the lights for Hogan. Number 7. We've only just begun. 1993 was the year for the man called Vader, with the super heavyweight holding the WCW World Championship all year, save for a 6-day spell in March. As for Ric Flair, the 10-time world champion was arguably fading from the spotlight as WCW sought to push other stars. However, an unexpected altercation would change things dramatically, pushing Flair back into the spotlight. WCW had originally planned to pit Sid Vicious vs Vader at Starrcade 93. That is until Sid stabbed Arn Anderson with scissors during an overseas tour, leading to Vicious getting fired. WCW called upon Ric Flair to save the day, putting the Nature Boy in an inspiring storyline where Flair put his career on the line against Vader's WCW Championship. Although the 400+ pounder Vader seemed unstoppable, the Nature Boy found a way to win, defeating Vader to claim his 11th World Championship. Number 6. Flair put Sting on the map. While the ultimate goal of a world champion was to sell tickets, it was nearly as important for a world champion to give the rub to a challenger, making him look great in the eyes of fans. This was never more apparent than the first Clash of Champions, where Ric Flair defended his NWA World Championship in a 45-minute classic with rising star Sting. The match made Sting that night, and while the match ended in a draw, Sting would win the championship 2 years later and come to be known as WCW's franchise player. Number 5. We Told You So. 1992's Royal Rumble was the first time the Rumble winner walked away with something other than the thrill of victory. Here, 30 competitors battled to win the Rumble, knowing the last man standing would be crowned WWF champion. Ric Flair entered at number 3, overcoming opponent after opponent, sometimes by chicanery, sometimes by skill, and sometimes by dumb luck. In the end, Flair's hand was raised in victory, making him the second man to have held both the NWA and WWF World Championship. Ironically, the man who had done so before was the original Nature Boy Buddy Rogers. The match was made all the more exciting thanks to the clever color commentary of Bobby the Brain Heenan and a post-match celebration involving Flair, Heenan, and Flair's executive consultant, Mr. Perfect. Number 4. The Steamboat Series. Many fans recall the classic NWA World Championship trilogy between Ricky Steamboat and Ric Flair in 1989, but the two clashed a decade earlier when WCW was Jim Crockett Promotions, working a remarkable program that made Steamboat into a star. While their 1970s rivalry was a classic, their 1989 program was all the more enjoyable because both wrestlers were at the top of their game. The series began at the Chi-Town Rumble with Steamboat pinning Flair to win the belt, followed by a best 2 out of 3 falls match at Clash of Champions 6 that ended in controversy, leading to a rubber match at Wrestle War, where Flair regained the belt. Every match was a wrestling clinic, and while Ric Flair has said his best matches with Steamboat were at house shows, these are the ones preserved for all time. Number 3. A Flair for the Gold. When NWA World Heavyweight Champion Harley Race felt Ric Flair was getting close to regaining the world title, Race placed a $25,000 bounty on Flair's head. Wrestlers Dick Slater and Flair's friend turned foe Bob Orton Jr. collected the bounty by spike pile driving Flair into seeming oblivion. However, Flair recovered, vowing revenge and to regain the championship. The NWA set up a steel cage match at its first ever closed circuit event, Starrcade, calling the supercard a Flair for the Gold. After a hard-fought battle, Flair defeated Race with a high cross body block, regaining the championship and beginning his second of many more reigns as world champion. Number 2. Genesis of the Horsemen. During the summer of 1985, Ric Flair feuded with Nikita Koloff over Flair's NWA World Championship. Although Flair was cheered against the much-hated Koloff, the Nature Boy was still much more of a tweener. When Dusty Rhodes offered to help Flair against Nikita's allies, Ivan Koloff and Crusher Khrushchev, Flair told the American Dream to stay out of his business. However, on the 29th September 1985, Rhodes came to Flair's aid after the Nature Boy defeated Nikita in a cage, and Nikita's uncle Ivan ran into double team Flair. Rhodes cleared the ring just as Flair's storyline cousins Arn and Ole Anderson entered the ring. When the Andersons attacked Rhodes, the Nature Boy began to walk out. The storyline was the beginning of what led to one of wrestling's greatest factions, the Four Horsemen. While the Horsemen would not officially ride until the addition of Tully Blanchard and James J. Dillon, this pivotal moment is seen by many as the genesis of the Horsemen. And number 1. Shawn Michaels retires Ric Flair. Unfortunately, all good things must come to an end. And while many of Ric Flair's fans wish he could wrestle forever, no one is immune to Father Time. The WWE decided to give Slick Rick a grand send-off, with the storyline where the ever-vindictive Mr. McMahon proclaimed Ric Flair's next loss in the ring would signal his last match. Flair dodged the axe numerous times until WrestleMania 24, when Shawn Michaels finally retired Flair, feeling he should be the one to end his good friend's career, rather than one of Flair's enemies. The match was a classic and ended on a bittersweet note. The next night on Raw saw Flair officially retire, but not before a heartfelt tribute by many of the superstars who had worked with the Nature Boy. Well guys, there you have it, Ric Flair's 10 greatest moments and the first edition of wrestling's GOAT. If you enjoyed the first edition, please drop a like and we'll have many more in the upcoming future. Subscribe if you haven't already, turn notifications on, and I'll see you next time with some more wrestling content.